You think they're letting people get to Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan could not live a normal life, and that is the real point of this story. When John Salley spoke about what it was like to be around Jordan, he did not describe a man who could walk into any room and do whatever he wanted. He described the opposite. He described a man so famous, so protected, and so watched that even simple things became almost impossible. People always imagine that being Michael Jordan meant total freedom. They imagine every door opening, every person trying to please him, and every night turning into whatever he wanted it to be. But John Salley painted a very different picture. He said Jordan was not moving through the world like a normal superstar. He was moving through it like someone under constant control. Every place he went became an event. Every room changed the second he entered it, and because of that, even something as simple as meeting women, talking in peace, or sitting quietly in a club without being noticed became almost impossible. That is what makes this story so wild. The man who looked like he had access to everything was, in some ways, locked out of the most normal parts of life. John Salley is not just some random person telling a story from far away. He lived that life. He knows what championship teams look like. He knows what star treatment looks like. He played with the bad boy Pistons. He played with the Chicago Bulls. He played with the Lakers. He won rings in different places and saw different kinds of superstars up close. So when a man like that sits down and tells you Michael Jordan could not even meet women the way a normal player could, people listen. And they listen because Salley is not talking like a fan from the outside. He is talking like a man who stood right next to Jordan and saw what fame really looked like when the cameras were not supposed to be watching. That is why this story hits so hard. It pulls back the curtain on a life that looked perfect from a distance. It tells you that the most famous basketball player in the world was not enjoying the same freedom that even lesser-known players had. In fact, Salley makes it sound like Jordan had less freedom than almost anyone in the league. That is the part most people never stop to think about. A role player in the NBA could still disappear in public if the night was right. He could still go to a club, sit in a corner and have a real conversation. He could still meet somebody without the whole room turning into a stage. He could still lose a game, leave the arena, go out and not feel the world closing in around him. John Salley said that in places like Miami, that kind of freedom actually made life more fun. He said if you were not the main target, if the whole world was not staring at you, you could still move around like a real person. You could still enjoy yourself. You could still be seen as a man, not a brand. That is what Michael Jordan did not have. Jordan did not get to go anywhere unnoticed. He did not get to test normal life. He did not get to walk into a room and wait to see what would happen. The room was already changing before he even sat down, before he spoke, before he smiled, before he had the chance to be anything other than Michael Jordan. And that matters because people often confuse attention with freedom.
And the problem is,
get you, nigga.
This is what I said. I traveled with Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, the Beatles.
Okay.
That was traveling with.
Right.
They're not letting anybody near y'all, dog. You ain't getting no stragglers because there are no stragglers because you're not letting any of that riffraff near the Messiah.
They think if everyone wants to look at you, then you must be winning. They think if all eyes are on you, then life must be easy. But Salley's story shows the other side of that. Too much attention can feel like a cage. Too much fame can kill the normal parts of life that people take for granted. A normal man can sit somewhere in peace. A normal man can meet somebody without cameras, noise, whispers, and pressure. A normal man can fail, look awkward, laugh it off, and move on. Michael Jordan did not get to do that. Every move became a public event. Every appearance became a performance. Every little moment carried the full weight of his name. That is not just fame. That is pressure. That is control. That is a machine around one person, making sure nothing happens outside the line. And once you understand that, the whole title starts to make more sense. It was never about Jordan lacking status or charm. It was about the fact that he was too famous to even have a normal shot at normal life. Salley explained it in the simplest way possible.
Jordan and Michael Jackson. And when Jay-Z said it, I agreed with it. But everything, he's the Michael Jordan of golf. He's the Michael
Right.
Jordan of comedy.
Right.
So imagine you don't get to meet anybody. I thought it was the worst time.
He compared traveling with Jordan to traveling with people like Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, and the Beatles. That says everything. Those are not just stars. Those are people whose names changed the feeling of an entire building. Those are people who could not walk through public life like regular human beings. So when Salley places Jordan in that group, he is telling you Jordan was not treated like an athlete. He was treated like something much bigger. He was treated like a cultural force, a global figure, a man whose image meant money, power, headlines, and protection. When you live at that level, nobody around you is thinking about what makes your night easier. They're thinking about how to manage the moment. They're thinking about how to protect the business. They're thinking about how to control access. And when that happens, everyday human things become hard. Meeting people becomes hard. Trust becomes hard. Privacy becomes hard. Even fun becomes hard. Because the second you step out, you are not just going out. You are entering a full operation. That is why the story Salley told about Philadelphia says so much. He said he had to beg Jordan to go out. Think about that. Most people assume Michael Jordan would be the first guy ready to step into a club and own the place. Salley says it was not like that at all. Jordan wanted a more controlled space. He wanted Atlantic City, where things could stay quiet and managed. Salley pushed him to try a club in Philly and promised he had everything set up, a back entrance, low lights, cigars, a setup that would let Jordan relax for a little while without the whole city crashing in around him. And for a brief moment, it almost worked. That is the wild part. It almost worked. For a few seconds, maybe Jordan thought he could actually have a normal night. Maybe he thought he could just sit there, enjoy the room, and be a man instead of a symbol. But then the owner spotted him, and the whole illusion was gone in an instant. The owner turned the lights on, just like that. Full attention, full exposure. Not because Jordan wanted it, not because the moment called for it, but because having Michael Jordan in that building was worth more to that owner than Jordan's comfort ever could be. That tells you everything about what Jordan was dealing with. The second people knew he was there, the place was no longer a club. It was a spotlight. Everyone looked, everyone reacted, every woman in the building knew he was there, every man in the room noticed, every whisper turned into noise, and suddenly Jordan was not a guest anymore. He was the event, he was the product, he was the reason the lights came on. That is the kind of thing that probably happened again and again in different ways throughout his life. Maybe not always with lights, but always with that same result. The room stopped being normal, and his presence changed the whole meaning of it. That is not freedom. That is fame turning every space into a show, whether you asked for it or not. And that is really what Salley meant when he said Jordan could not meet women. He was not saying women didn't want Michael Jordan. Of course they did. He wasn't saying Jordan lacked confidence or presence. Nobody believes that. He was saying Jordan could not meet anyone in a real way, not casually, not quietly, not without the full weight of who he was crashing down on the moment. That is a huge difference, because there's a difference between people being drawn to your name and people meeting you as a person. There's a difference between attention and connection. There's a difference between women reacting to Michael Jordan, the icon, and a woman meeting a man in a real moment with no show around it. Salley's point was that Jordan almost never got that second version. He got the first version all the time. He got the room freezing, the heads turning, the building changing, the energy shifting. That kind of fame makes real connection hard because the person arrives already buried under the image. The more you think about it, the sadder it gets. Jordan looked like the man who had everything: money, rings, fame, style, power, global love, and a level of respect that most athletes can only dream about. But what if all of that came with a price so heavy that normal joy became rare? What if the biggest star in the game could not just walk out and feel human for one night? What if he could not sit in a dark corner, smoke a cigar, talk to somebody, and see where the night went without the entire room turning it into a scene? That is what Salley is really telling you. He is saying greatness on that level does not just give, it also takes. It takes away small freedoms. It takes away simple moments. It takes away privacy. And once it takes enough, a man can start to live inside a very nice prison. Everything looks beautiful from the outside, but inside, the rules are tight and the exits are few. Salley took it even further when he talked about how the league viewed Jordan. He said the NBA had more invested in Michael Jordan than it did in the Bulls as a team. That is a huge statement, but it makes sense when you think about the era. Jordan was not just a player, he was the face of basketball. He was the face of shoes, ads, highlights, commercials, and the global rise of the sport. He did not only represent Chicago, he represented the entire league. He was the money machine, the image, the hero, the main event. And when a man becomes that valuable, every part of his life gets managed differently. Security gets tighter, access gets cut off, random people are kept far away, nothing is left to chance. The system around him is no longer there only to protect his safety, it is there to protect the business built on his name. That means people are not asking, how can Michael Jordan enjoy himself tonight? They are asking, how can we keep this machine running without risk? That changes everything. This also explains why Jordan turned inward so hard when it came to basketball. Salley said something very important about Jordan's routine. He noticed that Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Ron Harper were already working out at 7 in the morning before the rest of the team even got going. By the time many players were preparing for practice, Jordan had already lifted weights, eaten breakfast, and started his day. That tells you basketball was not just work for him, it was control, it was order. It was the one place where he could still decide exactly how things would go. A nightclub owner could flip the lights on, strangers could ruin a private moment, fame could swallow a normal evening, but in an empty gym early in the morning, none of that mattered. There were no whispers, no crowds, no strange energy, no room full of people turning his name into a public event. There was only the court, the work, and the one part of life that still obeyed him. That changes how you look at his obsession. People love to talk about Jordan's drive, his focus, his killer mindset, and how hard he worked. All of that is true, but what if that work meant even more than we thought? What if the gym was not only where he built greatness, but also where he escaped the cost of greatness? What if those early hours were peaceful in a way the rest of his life could never be? When the building was quiet, Jordan could be present without performing. He could move without being watched in the same way. He could be in full command of the space, and for a person whose life outside the court was so controlled, that must have felt powerful. It must have felt clean. It must have felt like relief. So maybe those workouts were not only about getting better, maybe they were also about holding on to the one part of life that still felt fully his. Salley later tied that same idea to Kobe Bryant, and that part of the story matters too. He said Kobe followed a very similar path. Early lifts, early gym work, total focus, total discipline. Kobe even answered Salley in a way that showed he understood exactly kind of road he was walking onto. When Salley asked if he wanted to be the next Michael Jordan, Kobe said he wanted to be the first Kobe Bryant. That answer sounds simple, but it carries a lot. It shows a young man who knew he was walking toward a giant level of fame, but wanted to do it on his own terms. And yet, the life pattern still looked familiar. Kobe, like Jordan, built himself inside the gym. He trained with a level of intensity that inspired other players and scared them too. And maybe that was no accident. Maybe the men who reach that level of greatness understand something most people never do. Once the world owns your image, the gym may be the only place left where you still own yourself. There is also something very human in the idea that Jordan kept chasing control because so much else could not be controlled. Think about how strange that life must have felt. In one space, you are more powerful than almost anyone alive. In another, you cannot even walk into a club without losing the room. In one space, you control games, outcomes, and legacies. In another, you cannot even choose who gets near you. In one space, you are the king. In another, you are the property everyone wants a piece of. That kind of split can shape a person. It can make them trust less. It can make them guard themselves more. It can make them choose work over chaos because work is honest. Work stays where you put it. Fame does not. Fame leaks into everything. Fame changes every room. Fame follows you home. This is why the usual way people talk about superstar life is so shallow.
They only talk about the good parts, the money, the women, the parties, the access, the attention, the look of power. But Sally's story cuts through that and shows the hidden trade. Yes, Jordan had endless attention, but that does not mean he had peace. Yes, he could walk into any building and own the energy, but that does not mean he could relax inside it. Yes, women noticed him everywhere, but that does not mean he could meet anyone in a normal, real, easy way. People confuse being desired with being free. They confuse being seen with being known. Sally's point was that Jordan's level of fame made basic human contact harder, not easier. That is what makes the story feel almost backward. The biggest star in the sport had fewer simple chances than lesser-known men around him. And maybe that is why so many people who become huge stars end up isolated, not because they want to be distant, but because the conditions around them push them there. When every room changes because of you, you stop entering rooms the same way. When every stranger has an angle, a reaction, or a story to tell about you, you become careful. When your life is worth money to too many people, somebody is always watching the edges. That kind of life can slowly cut off normal experiences, not all at once, but piece by piece. First, you stop going certain places. Then you stop trusting random moments. Then your circle gets smaller. Then the controlled spaces become your only real safe spaces. By that point, the world thinks you are living the dream, but you may actually be living inside a very narrow lane. Jordan's life may have looked huge, but Salley makes it sound like the parts of it that were truly free got smaller and smaller over time. That is why the Philadelphia story is more than just a funny club story. It is a symbol. It is the perfect little picture of a bigger truth. Jordan steps into a place hoping for one kind of night, and the world instantly turns it into another. He cannot hide. He cannot blend in. He cannot delay recognition. Even when people try to help him do it, the machine of fame finds him. A club owner sees a chance for attention and takes it. The room reacts. The moment is gone. Jordan is back in the role everybody expects from him. That probably happened in restaurants, hotels, airports, back rooms, and parties. It probably happened so many times that eventually he just stopped trying. And once you stop trying, people from the outside may think you are distant or cold, when really you are just tired of the same result. There is also something important in how Salley himself talks about those nights. He almost sounds sorry for Jordan, not because Jordan lacked anything material, but because he lacked the little freedoms that make a man feel normal. Salley, as a less famous player, still had ways to move. He could still have nights that belonged to him. He could still enjoy being out without becoming the center of a public storm.
Jordan could not. So while the world envied Jordan, some men around him may have understood that his life also came with a kind of loneliness. A strange kind of loneliness, too, because it happened in crowded rooms. Imagine being surrounded by people every time you step out, yet still unable to have a real, easy moment with anybody. That is a lonely life. Not empty, not poor, not unloved, but lonely in a way that only extreme fame can create. And then comes the hardest part of the whole story, asking whether the price was worth it. Was it worth giving up ordinary life to become Michael Jordan? Most people would say yes without even thinking. 6 rings, global fame, massive wealth, a legacy that will never die. For many people, that sounds like a fair trade. But Salley's story adds something important. It reminds you that greatness is not only built by talent and will, it is also paid for in private, in privacy, in freedom, in simple nights, in normal trust, in the ability to just be a man in a room. Jordan may have had more than almost anyone, but he also gave up more than most people can imagine. He did not get to turn it off. He did not get a normal off switch. He did not get the kind of quiet many people waste every day without even thinking about it. That does not mean we should feel sorry for him in some simple way. It means we should understand the full shape of greatness. We should stop talking about celebrity life like it is one long party. We should stop assuming that attention solves everything. Sally's words show the opposite. Too much attention can ruin the very experiences people think fame improves. Too much fame can make a simple human moment almost impossible. And once that happens, the person may pour even more of himself into the one world that still makes sense. For Jordan, that world was basketball. It is no surprise that he owned it with such force. Maybe the court was not just where he dominated others, maybe it was where he escaped them too. So when people hear that line about Michael Jordan not being able to get women, they should hear the deeper meaning behind it. It was never about women not wanting Michael Jordan. It was about Michael Jordan not being able to enter life like a normal man. It was about no normal approach being available to him. It was about every path to a casual, honest, unforced moment being blocked by security, fame, business, and the noise of his own image. That is what John Salley exposed. He showed that the most famous player in basketball was not walking through a world full of easy choices. He was walking through a world where even fun had to be managed, hidden, and protected. And even then, it could still be blown up in seconds. In the end, the story says more about greatness than it does about nightlife. It says more about fame than it does about romance. It tells us that Michael Jordan reached such a high level that normal life fell away beneath him. He became too big for the simple things, too watched for privacy, too valuable for risk, too famous for casual moments. And once that happened, the gym became more than a workplace. It became a shelter. It became the one place where the lights did not turn on unless he wanted them to. The one place where nobody in the room was trying to use his name for their own gain. The one place where the man and the legend could still feel like the same person. That is why this story stays with you, because it flips the dream upside down. It tells you the man with the most could not enjoy the least complicated parts of life. It tells you the face of basketball could not step outside without becoming a full public event. It tells you the icon people wanted to be was carrying a level of isolation they never saw. And once you hear it that way, Michael Jordan looks a little different. Not smaller, not weaker, just more human, more trapped, more shaped by the very fame that made him immortal. The world saw the shoes, the highlights, the rings, the smile, the swagger, and the trophies. John Salley saw the other part too. He saw what it cost. He saw the nights that never got to be normal. He saw why a man with everything still could not have peace in a dark room for even one simple night. And maybe that is the most insane part of all.